You are listening to episode 194 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Dr. Carolyn Dean. Carolyn is a naturopathic doctor that has authored over 50 books, including the bestseller, The Magnesium Miracle. And in 2015, she launched her company RNA Reset and introduced the product ReMag to the world. Carolyn was the first person to popularize magnesium therapy and spread the word on how powerful magnesium supplementation can be for optimizing overall health. So this was truly an honor to interview her. It was a lot of fun to ask her different questions that she probably hasn't been asked before. I was shocked to learn about the MAG RBC test because that's considered the gold standard in the circle that I've been in the last several years, which is apparently not the case. So some myths are busted. She talks about different forms of magnesium, the marketing hype that goes into that. She talks about potassium and why most people probably aren't getting enough potassium. Biohacking the body, talk about the C word, hair tissue mineral analysis tests, cold therapy, genetic testing, detox therapies, magnesium threonate, parasites, vitamin D, vegetarianism and veganism, and iron. So this episode was jam-packed, so get ready for a lot of information. Here is Dr. Carolyn Dean. All right. We are here with Carolyn Dean. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Matt. Great to be here. Great to see your A-frame. It looks, you set yourself up in perfect portrait in your A-frame. You planned that.
Yeah, it's funny. I was raised in, square, regular houses in San Diego for the first, almost 30 years of my life. And then I moved to the mountains and fell in love with pine trees and cabins and never looked back. So
with me, it was mountains and ocean. I had to be near both. And seriously, here I am in Maui. I can look up that way to see Mount Haleakala, and behind me is the ocean. I'm just blessed. It's amazing.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, and you were telling me before we started recording that you've been involved in biodynamic farming. Is that right?
Yeah, biodynamic organic. Well, what would I say about all that? Okay, so my dad always had a vegetable garden and taught me all that stuff. I always tried to grow things wherever I lived. And when we ended up, my husband and I, when we ended up in New York, I joined a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture community, where you pay a share in a farm, $200-300 up front. And then when their harvesting season comes, every week they bring you a box of food. And when we moved out of New York in 2008 to Maui, I wanted to find something similar. So I just, I looked around, somebody told me about this farmer. I thought he was awesome. So I right away started plying him with tractors and money and whatnot. And he just didn't know what to do with me. When I get an idea for something, I just go for it. Because I think food, of course, is the most important thing. But even then, Matt, to get to our other topics, I cannot live on just awesome organic fruits and vegetables. We all tried the vegetarian diet. For a lot of us, it didn't work. It did not work for me at all. And even the vegans and vegetarians that I've interacted with, even though they're drinking their 40 ounces of green drink a day and thinking they're on top of the world, they have their their muscle cramps and their heart palpitations and their insomnia and their tension, and they're magnesium deficient because the soil has been depleted, and really nobody knows how to replete the soil perfectly. Your body is the experiment, and you find out when you try to eat perfectly that you don't feel perfect.
Yeah, that's well said. And our correspondence setting up this chat, you were saying that I'm like the Joe Rogan of health podcasts because I've had on so many different voices and all of the different, as you said, like the body is the experiment. And actually, when I started this show a few years ago, it was I don't know, I lost count, sixth time trying the vegetarian diet. And it was my talk with the late Dr. Cass Ingram that he changed my mind, just saying, animals were put here, by God or creation for our benefits. And just the way he said things kind of shifted me.
Right.
But yeah, that's why I
Right.
love having the show, is each guest just kind of propels me forward.
Right. Well, three things. It's also that you let us go on for hours. That's a Joe Roganism. And my worst experience with a non-animal protein diet was macrobiotics. I think the doctor who was, a friend of mine, he was trying to push me into it. I think he pushed me, to do it longer than I should have. I ended up with pneumonia. Now, it wasn't a bacterial pneumonia. It was just sort of rasping. I put my stethoscope to my chest and so I realized, this is what I realized, that I was building up fluid in my lungs because I didn't have enough protein to, work the balance of the fats, carbohydrates, and protein. There's a balance for a reason. So, the moment an hour after I ate my chicken meal, my lungs were clear.
Wow.
So everybody's the experiment in that case. And the third point, I forget what it was.
Yeah, and there's always outliers, like where someone could thrive on a pure carnivore diet, or I have like pure fruitarian friends that are genius talking about genetics and stuff. But I think that's like 1% on either end of the outliers. Most people need a balance of all the nutrients and everything.
Well, the percentage is interesting, Matt, because when you look up statistics about the percentage of vegans, vegetarians, 4%. So that 4% has a megaphone voice of like 100%, making all the rest of us feel, quote, less than. We feel, oh, you're not whatever spiritual enough. It's terrible what's done to try to force people into vegetarian veganism. And I'm a bit worked up about it because my foster daughter, she tried raw vegan for decades. And as her side effects and symptoms grew, the gurus, names of whom we all know, just kept telling her to be stricter. And it wasn't until her teeth started falling out that she said, yeah, I guess you were right, Carolyn. Well, but for her, I was right. But see, this is the problem. If folks try it and they don't do well, and then they're told, oh, you're just going through a detox, so, try harder. That's not good information. And unfortunately, medicine has, jumped ship on anything to do with nutrition and wellness and lifestyle and supplements. They have been bought and sold by the drug companies so that the people that we think are supposed to be there for our health, the medical community, the doctor that makes a house call, they don't exist anymore. So we're left with folks like me and you who are like the wild, wild west. We're just out there experimenting and passing on our results.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think about that, how we didn't get a manual for this body, and we kind of should have one, and we really have to figure out all of these things on our own. And I think the confusion is by design, right? To make us, battle
Mhm.
each other in this community. And I wanted to kind of segue, because we've been talking about, dieting and kind of the judgment that comes along with that. Being in the supplement field, like I often say, I used to hang out with my friend at Sprouts. It's like a chain in California, in the supplement section, and just eavesdrop on
Yeah,
customer
yeah.
conversations, just hours and hours. And I'm just a
Mhm.
fanatic. Like it's a date for my girlfriend and I to go and read labels on supplements and kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's the philosophy around supplements it's so interesting to me, because I'm seeing that there's like three camps. There's like, and growing camps, like whole food only supplements, and isolated supplements are harmful. Or there's people that demonize certain supplements, like vitamin D or zinc or whatever it is. And then there's people that demonize all supplements. Those are like the carnivore naturalist crowd. And I think all of them are wrong. I think there's so much nuance and context, right? And so to discount isolated supplements because they're not whole food, or to say all supplements don't work, it's a big topic, right?
It is, and I guess that's where my history comes in, because I've been at this since my late teens, and I'm in my early 70s now. So I've been at this from the time before there were almost any books on the subject, before there were health food stores in most cities. And the first supplements that came about were whole food supplements. That's where they came from. And so then what happened? We went to, well, we can make the same chemical looking structure from coal tar, and you won't know the difference. So what happened there? By this time I've done my medical training, and then I did my naturopathic, and I knew what Prevention magazine told me, and Adele Davis and the early people before med school. That's why I went into med school, because I kept spouting all this stuff and no one would listen to me. So I said, I'll teach you. I'll be a doctor, and then you'll have to listen to me. Seriously, Matt, I thought back then in the early mid 70s that, within 10, 15, 20 years, all doctors would be MDs and naturopaths. I truly thought that, because the health food industry was just beginning. But man, did medicine take the wrong turn. They went down the drug lane. So with the supplements, what happened when I was starting to do my naturopathic lectures, we had Jeffrey Bland. Have you come across that name?
I haven't.
Dr. Jeffrey Bland. He's PhD. He started Metagenics,
Oh, okay,
that
right.
company. So Jeffrey, he was this, guy with the biggest brain in the world. And he read all the studies, and he spouted off these studies, and look at this. And yeah, it was okay. But then it was like, well, how do you apply that? You've got all this information, and, one study would contradict the next one. And then the only people that seemed to be getting anything out of his lectures were the supplement industry, where they would see a rat study which showed that, choline is helpful for blah blah blah, and they'd rush off and produce a choline supplement. And so we've got the supplement industry riding on the research, and nobody really going for the clinical. And yet then in the naturopathic world, we were told, first do no harm, and go to nature first, and the body leads the way, and the body wants to heal in priorities. But, then a lot of allopathic philosophy got held into naturopathy, but that's a whole other topic. In terms of the supplements, what I saw happening with my MD and naturopath friends is, oh, well, these synthetic supplements, 2 and 4 milligrams of the bees doesn't work. Let's do 10. Oh, no, well, let's do 20. Let's do 100. So they had to keep going up to get a reaction. And, there's no research to show it, but common sense just tells you, well, the body didn't want that synthetic B vitamin. It kept rejecting it. But when you force 50, 100 milligrams, are you kind of finally disintegrating the receptor sites and forcing the issue? So I saw all that happening. And then the next stage was, well, the 100 milligrams oral isn't working. Let's do IM, intramuscular injections. Oh, well, then let's do IV. And certainly by the time you get to IM and IV, there's nothing organic or natural about any of that. It has to be synthetic. So the whole system got perverted. And what I personally did when, I observed all this, I was working with patients, I was in a medical practice taking medical billing, but really being a naturopath, I didn't have to go to the drugs. It was so rare. The pharmacist would show up. Are you sure you wrote a drug prescription? Because down at the hospital, the X-ray people, are you sure you want this X-ray? You never order X-rays. Or I heard the rumor that, well, Dr. Dean ordered it. She must think something's there, so we better find it. So that's the way I practiced as a naturopath, watching all this, watching the supplement industry become, what is it now? Billions of dollars. And since, the past, I guess, at least 20 years, the drug companies have been trying to take over the supplement industry. And, that came about. Have you followed the Codex Alimentarius? Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of, that they were going to ban. I know with COVID, they threatened to ban, was it N-acetylcysteine? And they had a list. I could just never tell if it's from a blog post or if it's legitimate,
Mm-hmm. Well, what happened in the early 2000s, I started to get involved with going to meetings in Europe with the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, created this Codex Alimentarius committee, I guess you'd say, to standardize chemicals and toxins in food and dietary supplements. So think about it. World Trade Organization, they want as much toxicity in the foods as possible to appease the industry. And with supplements, their stated goal was to use low dose synthetic supplements that don't interfere with drugs. Seriously. So they wanted all the countries in the world to sign on to this low dose synthetic, get rid of high dose and everything. As far as I know, the United States signed on immediately. Hopefully that get thrown out with all the other things that got thrown out in 2016. But I don't know, because now there's some guy, I don't want to say the wrong name, but there's some bills out now that are trying to get lists of supplements and all their ingredients so that they can start tossing out supplements. So knowing all this from the early 2000s, I was in Bonn, Germany, and Rome, Italy, and I just saw the writing on the wall that they were trying to trash dietary supplements. And when I get to the point where, in my personal story about supplements, is when I was in New York in the late 90s, Random House asked me to write a book on magnesium, because I'd already written some health books and I was on local TV and in Manhattan and all. And I thought, one mineral, how can you write 300 pages on one mineral? Get out of town. So I, of course, took the assignment and found out that I was a poster child for magnesium deficiency. I had the headaches and the neck tension and the the insomnia and the horrible Charlie horse muscle cramps and back pain. And still, I thought it was like 100% productive, but I had all this stuff going on. And when I looked at the supplements I was just taking like 10 milligrams of magnesium or something. And when I started taking more magnesium, I immediately got the laxative effect. So I wrote this book on magnesium showing that actually in the updated version 2017, I found that 80% of known metabolic functions require magnesium. 80%. And that might translate into about 1,000 enzyme systems. So I realized, to me, it was mind blowing. Over the years, all the supplement companies use my book to push their magnesium. But I spent the 10 years following the publication trying to find a company that would make a non-laxative magnesium. Because what I had to do was just, do Epsom salt bath, slather myself with magnesium lotions to try to get enough to keep my heart palpitations away. And finally, I got a chemist he had some notion that he could concentrate magnesium and stabilize the ions so that you had an ionic form of the elemental magnesium that would just shoot right into the cells and go to work. So I worked with him, funded him, and then he produced the goods. A magnesium that's 60,000 parts per million. A teaspoon is equal to 300 milligrams. It's a liquid. And whereas before, 10, 20 milligrams of magnesium will give me the laxative effect, I could take 1,200 milligrams of this stuff with no laxative effect and just watch all my symptoms, just leave my body. It took a while. It did take a year and a half to where I could go a day or two without my, what I call picometer ionic stabilized magnesium, where I could not take it and not get my symptoms back. So, which proves that I had stored magnesium, et cetera, et cetera. And at the same time, and by then, a year and a half, I was down to only 300 to 450 milligrams a day. I was down to sort of what we say is the, RDA of magnesium. Now, if I go up to 600 milligrams or more, I will get the laxative effect, which again proves to me that I'm saturated, I don't need more, and that the body has this incredible fail-safe mechanism with magnesium. I think it's, it might be the only nutrient that does this. Fail-safe, if you take too much, you'll have the laxative effect. Once you're saturated, you have to get past that because, we'll have people who take this ReMag, and I'm purposely not giving the names because I don't want to be advertising.
It's fine.
But, and also because of the alphabet, people have, put a curse on me. So with taking these minerals, we've come to the point where we can make them in all forms. So like a multiple mineral will have 12 minerals. And when I was creating that formula, I realized that 9 of those minerals are required to support thyroid function. And when we were doing the trials on it, I found after about 6 weeks, I no longer needed my 60 milligrams of Armour thyroid. My hands were finally warm, which were, still cold on the Armour thyroid. So minerals rule, everybody knows it, but nobody is using the right form of minerals to get the absorption so that you don't have to go, high potency and suffer side effects and all the rest of it.
Wow, that was awesome. Yeah, I went the hard route. I was doing foot baths, and it's not practical for most people because I was getting, I don't know, 8-pound bags or whatever it was. They're very heavy, and I had to get filtered water. And back then I was heating the water on the stove, and I would fill my copper foot bath
right.
and that seemed to help, but it was very labor intensive versus like the ReMag would be a lot easier for most people. And then I got into making magnesium bicarbonate at home, which kind of started trending, I think thanks to me, the last three years. But that's super, super laxative effect. It is very cheap to make. And some people make the argument that it's the most natural form, the HCO3. That's like, I think Russell Beckett studied animals and found, their lifespan increased 20 to 30% just because they had this magnesium bicarbonate in the water. But my philosophy on nutrients is like, it's not one best form. But we don't need all the forms at the same time. It's kind of somewhere in the middle.
Oh yeah, you can rotate through forms, but you take someone like me, and I don't know the percentage of people who have this severe laxative effect, but certainly, the customers that approach me, they're on a lot of medication, they're toxic, and I have a phrase that I use: too toxic to detox, where that type of person will go to a practitioner with being on like 12 drugs and a bad diet and overweight and fluid retention, and the first thing a practitioner will say, well, we have to put you on a detox. Anything we give you is going to be wasted because you're this and that. I mean, it's just, we have to stop you eating all these foods, and it's just too much. I mean, most new whatever patients will just walk away. And what I say to people is, okay, well, if you can get a magnesium in you that you can take in drop form until you get up to the teaspoon, that you could even spray on your skin until you can take it by mouth, then you've got some options. If you say to someone who has been allergic to everything, and they say, every time I take a new supplement, I start having a toxic reaction. Well, they may be having a die-off, a yeast overload die-off. They may be detoxifying crap, but they look upon, and which we say, oh, that's great, rah, rah, rah. But for them, it's a straw that can break their back. You have to approach people where they are. You cannot just, have this set of don't do this, don't do that, like you're their judge. Clinically, you learn this. And, there are a lot of people out there that, as you alluded to earlier, they'll find their cure and then try to talk everybody else into it. Or they'll just keep jumping from cure to cure. Whereas, seriously, Matt, it is about giving the body the building blocks and letting it do the work. But the building blocks have to be easily absorbed with the vitamins I work with. The Bs are food-based and methylated. I mean, we knew about this methylation problem a long time ago. With zinc now, it's zinc with copper. I mean, I was around when Carl Pfeiffer was beating the drum about copper toxicity. And everybody began to be afraid of copper, and afraid of copper compounds. But then at the same time, copper is invaluable to the body. The arteries need copper to stay flexible. How many things can we say about copper? So what you need with copper is bioavailable copper. And seriously, I'm not going to eat enough liver to give me the copper I need. I'm just not. And the whole liver business, I'm on the board of the Gerson Institute. I knew Charlotte Gerson, and she told me years ago that they had a very hard time getting liver that they trusted because everything was so contaminated, even the organic, grass-fed, whatever. The environment is toxic. And then you sidebar from that. So what do you do? I mean, I remember the days where where people were, going out in the wilderness, living in a little shack, drinking spring water, just trying to avoid all the pollutions. People with food allergy, I'll avoid all these foods. Seriously, we cannot live like that. We have to build our body. We have to keep strengthening it. I think the cutoff with me and Charlotte Gerson, and I realized, okay, this is too far out. She looked at my toenails. I color all my toes with different colors. And so she saw my toenails and she said, oh, I could never wear nail polish. I tried it once and it made me faint. You cannot live your life like that. You have to adapt, adopt, and survive. So my adaptation, I realized, came when I started to look into magnesium, got myself saturated. Okay, I got 80% of my body working. What's left? And that's where my experiments came in. But then when I looked at various things, like the copper problem, I said, oh, okay, well, I'm taking care of all these different things about copper. My ceruloplasm is fine because I'm doing all these wonderful things. So that means my ceruloplasm is binding up my copper and my iron. Okay, so that's taken care of. Everywhere I looked, if you were giving your body a grounding in the supplements that we all know we need, then you were taking care of things. And knowing that is probably half the battle, Matt, because what I do, okay, in the physical world of medicine, I'm looking at magnesium deficiency and all the minerals. If you're deficient in magnesium, they're all going to be low. You can't separate them. And then there's yeast overgrowth. We can talk about that too. The toxins from yeast will attract more infections. When I had yeast overgrowth, I loved my ice cream and sugar every day and birth control pill and all the rest of it. So once I got into the hospitals, and you have to do hospital rotations in second, third, fourth year, I developed staphylococcal nasal boils. And people who have yeast overgrowth will develop that because of the terrain, the environment sets you up for it. So I think a lot of people with yeast overgrowth will develop other viruses or whatever. When I left Toronto, I went to New York to do AIDS research. During the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, I was asked to do a homeopathic acupuncture herbal modality, and we had great results with our patients up until Fauci made them leave and take AZT, which killed them. Wow. So with our AIDS patients, they all had all the viruses on blood tests. They had a lot of bacterial infection. They all had parasites, and they all had yeast. And so that was my learning curve about infections, that we all have a infectious load. And how I work with that, it's, from forever, I've been treating yeast overgrowth. But it came to a point where it was just too strict, rotating the antifungals. That's where I met Cass Ingram and his oregano oil. And he was a wonderful guy. I can't believe he passed away. I just can't. I heard that on one of your podcasts. So yeah, he was doing great work with oregano oil, but even oregano oil was very strong. It would kill off some good bacteria as well. So probiotics are important. And I like your work with Shilajit. I use humic fulvic. I use a humic fulvic and Saccharomyces boulardii in my yeast treatment. And I finally decided, rather than rotating people, do this for 3 months and see how you do. Seriously, the way the world is now with the stress and the diet and and try not to be 100% fanatic. I think people need a daily antifungal. So personally, I'm taking a couple capsules of my Flora Revive, which is the Saccharomyces boulardii, and the humic fulvic, and pico silver. So silver is what will help people with all the layers of infection. I mean, we have people who will do this, picometer size stabilized ion of silver, not at all like colloidal silver. The thing is, when you have something that's a stabilized ion of a mineral, you cannot see it. Even on, there's something called a nanozizer that we did in one of our studies. I'm doing university studies on magnesium absorption and whatnot. So they put the ReMag in a clear, bell jar, and they shone a laser through it. And if there are solid particles in the liquid, it will bounce off. The laser will bounce off the solid particles. Well, this laser just went through, no solid particles, which means they are at a picometer size. They are small enough to absorb into the cells. So this silver is not like a colloid that will build up in your tissues and turn you blue. And what we've seen, I mean, silver is still used as an antibiotic to protect people after they've had terrible burns. That's the only thing that works, is putting a silver medication on them. And with the research, one of the things that really made me just buzz about this ionic silver is it stimulates stem cell production. Wow. So if you've got something that will constantly, keep your stem cells turning over, and then those naive cells will go to the tissues where you need support. I mean, that's the holy grail right there to me, or one of the holy grails. And, that we're up against, people who transplant stem cells. Heaven forbid, they're using fetal cells, and they're doing it in clinics. And the doctors that I've talked to who tell me about this, they say, yeah, it does work. You put these stem cells in people, but if they don't take, proper supplementation, change their diet, change their lifestyle, they go right back to where they were. So, something that naturally stimulates your stem cells is awesome. So where were we, Matt?
That was awesome. I love listening to you. What's that? A lot of this stuff I've been looking into lately, like you mentioned, Carl Pfeiffer. I went back and read a lot of his old books. And he used high dose niacin to treat schizophrenia in a lot of people. And some of those stories are miraculous. And it has to be better than pharmaceuticals, even if it's, coal tar derived. But yeah, the silver, my neighbor, his cat got its throat ripped open like about a month ago, and he just put some silver gel on it. I think Silver Sol, it's like a popular product, and it helped heal it up. And I gave the cat a grounding sheet, so it was grounded because it lives in his shop mainly. But it's amazing. I mean, it's a great first aid to have around too. I get cuts and scrapes here all the time on the farm, and you need something to put on. So,
or for eye infections, you can drop it. Just our form. I don't know about other forms, but you can drop it straight in the eye because it doesn't burn or sting. It's really quite miraculous. Where were you? You mentioned about Pfeiffer. Oh, yeah, the schizophrenia. Yeah, I knew Abram Hoffer up in Canada. I knew him personally. He was awesome. He did the high dose, the megavitamin therapy for schizophrenia. And a company that's kind of taken that on and been under some attack up in Canada is truehope.com. I mean, because I'm an online company, I don't presume to treat depression or schizophrenia or anything like that. So I refer people to truehope.com, and they have something called Empower Plus, which is high dose of all the nutrients. I mean, it is very much kitchen sink.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're dealing with something like depression or schizophrenia, you need the kitchen sink. But the amazing part of what they've done, Matt, is they've done research studies, like dozens of them, showing that this stuff works. Mm-hmm. And what we do when we refer people is say, you can take their products, but you have to keep taking our ReMag because you're always going to need more ReMag. And, just very good results. So there are things out there that we've come across. But yeah, the whole schizophrenia thing and Carl Pfeiffer and the pyroluria, I mean, I look at all that, how they were going into the weeds about the different reactions in the body. But I do wonder if, again, you get enough magnesium and your other minerals, can the body deal with it? I mean, what did we do in the past 2 decades, maybe? We went into the genetics. We did the whole genome project, and what happened there? Okay, the researchers who put the billions of dollars into it or spent the billions of dollars, they thought they would find a gene that created such and such, and they could snip it out and say, voila, you're cured. And they theorized that there would be 100,000 genes in the body, and they could just snip at will. They found 23,000 genes, a quarter of what they thought. So it freaked them out totally, because then they realized, oh, the genes aren't working on their own. They need, they're either working together, or as we found out, it's epigenetics with all the different vitamins and minerals that are cofactors in turning genes on and off. I mean, I remember a rat study where rats were, they were obesity rats. So it was very easy to get them to be obese. So they isolated an obesity gene. But if they gave those obesity gene rats enough B vitamins, they got thin. So the B vitamins turned off their obesity gene. And it sounds simple, and it is simple. I mean, that's one of the things, like, I'm sure you've run across this, Matt, when you come across something simple that really works, and people say, oh, that's impossible. It's too simple. We see that all the time when people take our ReMag, and, they're probably taking it for restless legs or leg cramps. And then they say, oh my gosh, my headaches are gone. I'm sleeping better. My heart palpitations are gone. The biggest epidemic now in medicine seems to be heart palpitations, atrial fibrillation. And I don't know, maybe it's because they're, doing the EKG on everyone, or maybe it's their watch, whatever it's called. Is it an iWatch?
Yeah.
Or the Fitbits or whatever. They're measuring the pulse and diagnosing atrial fibrillation and heart palpitation, sending people off to the doctor, and they're put on anticoagulant blood thinners and scared right out of their brains. And it may be a magnesium and potassium deficiency.
Yeah.
So we're fighting that as well.
I love that. Yeah, I think earlier you're saying 80% of known functions of the body require magnesium. And I found like that Magnesium study, it was like 3,751 proteins are magnesium dependent. And I'm a big like EMF guy, but not into like the pendants and the pyramids and stuff. My number one tip for people with EMFs is get your magnesium levels up and supplement magnesium, because that's the natural protection, right? 'Cause isn't magnesium involved in like making our biofield? It's making energy, thus it's kind of supporting our like force field.
I think the scientific words would be that magnesium helps reduce the calcium levels, because it's those calcium ion channels that apparently are affected by EMFs. So what would it be? It would be like the calcium ion channels are blasted open with EMF, and a lot of calcium goes into the cells, and the cells just quiver to death. But the magnesium, it is responsible for opening and closing the channels. So if you have enough magnesium, the channels stay closed. It's in my Magnesium Miracle book. I talk about the EMFs and, try to get people not to worry about them too much. But I do joke about it. I volunteer at the farmer's market, so the farm I help with twice a week. I go to the farmer's market and take cash and everything. And we have our little swipe card machines, and we're all agog. It takes 2 seconds to run them up. And I said, yeah, we're good until the EMP hits, electromagnetic pulse, because everything's just going to go down. And that's why you have created the plan B by having your homestead, because you'll be fine.
Hopefully. I have one, what's it called? The thing that fries if there's an EMP, safe shield, or something plugged into the inline of my solar setup between the panels and the and the batteries and inverters. But yeah, we do our best. I mean, I often think, you can't be fully off grid. It's like I still need propane, diesel, and gasoline for all my different machines, skid steer and stuff. So, until we have free energy, I had some friends visit a couple months ago that came from like a free energy conference in Washington near me, and supposedly they had working machines, and they were showing how they worked, and you couldn't buy anything. It was all just schematics, but I mean, that'd be really nice. I often dream of that being out here. Like, that would save me a lot of time, filling the propane tank. But anyway, back to. Oh, okay.
Well, then I know that's definitely coming. I know people who have it, who have done it. So it's just a matter of how to release it without getting killed.
Yeah, they were saying as soon as you sign that document to open that factory, they, defibrillate your heart or whatever. So it's just don't have enough magnesium.
It's a toss up. Yeah, it's a toss up, which way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's definitely going a direction. And kind of meditating on this call, I was thinking about, we started this interview with like growing food, and I figured that was a good segue into supplements, because when I moved here a few years ago, I helped my neighbor with fibromyalgia using systemic enzymes, and it reduced by 90% in a few months. And he asked me once, he's like, Matt, how long do I have to keep taking these supplements, or why do we have to keep taking these supplements? And I thought that was a good question. And the answer would be, well, the environmental toxins, we're not getting them in the food. As you said, the soil's depleted. I interviewed Jeff Lawton a couple years ago, and he's like a world famous permaculturist. And he was basically saying it's the pH of the soil, that when that's off, the plants lose access to different minerals. I thought that was a really good explanation. So it's the pH that opens and closes the doors to allow access for minerals to get into the roots matrix. And
right.
But
there's pH and there's the organisms themselves that get killed with the fertilizers and directly killed with herbicides and pesticides. I mean, that's another thing that I'm working on. One of our products is germinated barley seeds. We have something called RNA drops, and we have these huge, it might be 200-gallon drums that rotate the barley seeds. And we never threw away the straw that was left over after we made this liquid. So that straw, the barley straw, we call it Mighty Mash. And we had experiences with it, people using it as kind of a fertilizer, help their plants along. So I brought some over to the farm here, and we put the straw in a plot and planted radishes, and another plot same size, just adjacent. We didn't put any of the barley straw. And after the 25-6 day growing season, we harvested the Mighty Mash radishes. We had 85 pounds of the most gorgeous red radishes. And in the non-straw plot, we had 3 pounds that were usable. The rest of them had been wormed and just stunted in their growth from all the weeds and everything. So what did I get from that? I mean, first of all, the way we grow our barley, it's a prebiotic, probiotic, it's a life form, it's living. So what that Mighty Mash fertilizer is doing is giving life force to the plant and making them reject pathogens. It's like the prime directive of pathogens is you go to the weakest. So they went to the weak radishes next door, didn't bother with the strong ones who had a life force. And that's what humans are doing. We have our life force. I mean, we have our energetics and our RNA drops, although that's my big experiment with the RNA drops, because we can't, I don't have $1 billion to do a study of giving them to, 100 people and giving another 100 people water. So giving them the life force and it's the same kind of thing with certain supplements, especially the minerals that are electrolytes. I think of the machinery that, I went through the radionics and all the Zyto machines, all the different machines. They require energy from the body. You're measuring the energy from the body, or the treatments, the energy machine treatments. Your body has to have electrolytes to produce the energy to give you the reading, or to improve your function. So to me, it always goes back to the minerals. I don't even bother with the machines anymore because I know it's all about the minerals.
What about ozone? Because you're talking about yeast overgrowth, and you talked about candida and different things. And I've done rounds of rectal ozone insufflation. My friend Charles down in Texas got me into that, and I just felt. I mean, I put it in my ears, the gas. I felt definitely a buzz and definitely clearer minded. And yeah, it's funny you mentioned genetics too. I'm trying to tick off our long list of subjects to talk about. Could talk for a while, but my genetics test said I'm more prone to airborne mold, and I was raised in a beach house in California where my mom said there was mold, and so I'm just kind of connecting the dots with my allergies and brain fog. I'm like, yeah, I probably had some mold exposure growing up. Interesting, which ozone supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, ozone, obviously, it's awesome. When I was doing my naturopathic training, I hung out with a doctor who was using ozone. I mean, I think it's important in dentistry to use ozone when you're doing a root canal, et cetera, et cetera. I've used ozonated water when I used to wash my vegetables. I don't bother washing vegetables anymore from the farm because I want that dirt. But for me, the Pico Silver really took over because I can nebulize the Pico Silver, whereas hydrogen peroxide, you have to dilute it, and then it's sort of irritating. But I can nebulize Pico Silver. But mostly I just squirt Pico Silver in my nostrils every couple of days or so, and that keeps everything awesome. So yeah, there are choices. there are choices, and ozone is definitely something. For example, in cancer therapy or in a clinic, that would be something that people should use.
I like what you said, that the body wants to heal in priorities. I like how you worded that. And for people like us, it's like, I'm just like, let me experiment with everything. But a lot of people that just want to heal and get back to balance, they want to know, like, okay, what are the priorities of things to do, supplements or devices. And yeah, I think magnesium, like you're saying, is definitely one of the top. And it's burning question I have for you, Carolyn, is testing, because there seems to be mixed, there always is with tests, mixed opinions.
Mm-hmm.
I was under the impression that magnesium red blood cell was the gold standard, but now I'm hearing about ionized calcium and all of these other ways to measure it. Because my magnesium RBC is, last time I measured, like 6.3 or 6.4, really strong. But then I've heard that can be falsely elevated, kind of like iron. So there's just curious your thoughts in general on magnesium testing. And
right. Yeah, that's a big thing, because certainly we know the serum magnesium test is very inaccurate. I mean, you just have to look at the range. It's like 1.8 to 2.2. And, that teeny range, because if it's out of range, then the heart starts getting thrown off. So the range in the body is to protect the heart from having palpitations, atrial fibrillation, or whatever. If it goes low, then it triggers off a feedback mechanism, and the magnesium comes out of the muscles and bones. And so, because it's always looked normal in most people, and it's so narrow, even in the hospitals, they don't bother with it. Magnesium, that's why magnesium is not on an electrolyte panel. Seriously, you look at electrolyte panels: sodium, potassium, chloride, no magnesium. And magnesium is the most important mineral in the whole universe. And when I started looking into it, then the RBC magnesium came up, and okay, it's got a broader range. But what happened is, even in the few years that I was looking at it, the range started getting lower as people's magnesium levels got lower. So a range of a blood test is going to show what that lab's client's blood looks like. It's not an average. It's not an optimum. It's just, Sam and Betty walked in and we did their blood, and here's the range. And as people got more magnesium deficient, the range fell lower. Instead of like 4.2 at the bottom, it's 3.2. So now doctors can say, oh, you're 3.2, you're fine. Seriously? When 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium, you want to be at that top end, like 6.8 or so. So you're good. You're at the top end. That's awesome. And the thing I have against the red blood cell magnesium, and why it's kind of, I guess, inaccurate or whatever, is red blood cells do not have mitochondria. They don't have mitochondria. Where does the magnesium hide out in the cells? In the mitochondria. So they're testing an area that doesn't have, it'll just have the magnesium that kind of wandered in out of the bloodstream, and it's not being held there. So yeah, the research I'm doing, the first study was out of Purdue. The next one's going to be University of Minneapolis. We're comparing a red blood cell magnesium and ionized magnesium and the absorption and all the rest of it. We're trying to get the magnesium research establishment to accept the fact that we need to do ionized magnesium testing to find out, who's sick and who's not. But then, so we'll do that. Oh, look, oh my goodness, everybody's low in magnesium. What to do? What to do? And then they'll say, oh, take magnesium oxide. Oh my gosh, everybody's got the laxative effect. This is horrible. Stop taking magnesium. So it's crazy time because all the early magnesium research was on magnesium oxide. Most doctors think, well, okay, that's the magnesium we use. And then, come to find out only 4% of magnesium oxide, magnesium is absorbed. The rest goes out through the urine and the intestines. And how did that come about that magnesium oxide got top billing? Some very smart lady in a magnesium oxide company offered free samples to all the researchers, and magnesium oxide is in all the papers. And it still works. Even at 4%, even with all the laxative effect, it works. You look at all the research papers, magnesium does this, does that, gets into the brain even. And you have these, magnesium L-threonate, yahoos coming along and saying, oh, our magnesium is the only one that can get into the brain. And they did such a good job that everyone is brainwashed to think it's true, even though, as far as I could see from that paper they did on the rats, there was a 7% difference in the amount of magnesium in the spinal fluid of these poor little rats of the threonate compared to the citrate. And I may have it all wrong because I really don't bother with a lot of research papers, because you can sidebar. When I was in junior high school, I was on the debating team. I could debate either side and win. You can take facts and just mangle them, massage them any way you like. So with this magnesium oxide business, they have a way in the government of saying, well, we have to keep the RDA at 300-400 because people have side effects, and they don't realize it's just bad absorption.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the threonate, because there's companies out there marketing, our magnesium contains all 7 forms of magnesium and you need all 7 because they all go to different places. But I'm glad to hear that you're in agreement that it all gets into the brain, right? It goes to the mitochondria.
Oh, yeah.
It's not, there's nothing special with different forms necessarily, unless maybe you need, whether it's chloride or, if you have a pancreas issue, maybe you need bicarbonate. Maybe there's kind of that aspect, or the sulfate for sulfur if someone's sulfur deficient, but not that.
What? Yeah, correct. I mean, you're not taking a magnesium compound for the other part of the compound. You're taking it for the magnesium, first of all, by chelating it or binding it to these other, like the taurate or whatever. That's the way to get 2 things, I guess you could say. And both of them are low dose. I mean, think of it. When you do a magnesium hydroxide, 500 milligrams, say in a teaspoon of a powder, only 200 milligrams is the magnesium component. 300 is the OH2. When you look at, something like magnesium taurate, I think it's like 75 milligrams is the magnesium in a 500 milligram. When you look at threonate, it's for 1,000, and one label I was just looking at, for 2,000 milligrams, they have on the front of the label, 2,000 milligrams magnesium L-threonate. You think you're getting 2,000 milligrams of magnesium. You look on the label, elemental magnesium, 144 milligrams. When I tried one of these L-threonate compounds, I was having to take, I would have to take 10 of them, but it would give, I was getting the laxative effect after 2. So there's all that going on, besides the fact that in the threonate compounds, especially there's one, they say they make it oil-based or something for better absorption, and they put phosphatidylcholine in it. and it ends up being like, $60 for 30 packets, and it's hugely expensive. Everybody complains about the price. But what have they got there? They got a phosphatidylcholine, which is an awesome supplement on its own. They've got threonate, which is an awesome brain supplement on its own. And they've got a little bit of magnesium. So what's doing the work? And, it's all marketing. And, as far as I could see about the threonate, it's patented.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a push by the drug companies to start patenting our formulas, doubling the price, and then, making it unavailable to a lot of people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely something to amino acid therapy. And I guess, the question is 2 grams of taurine or glycine and bound to magnesium beneficial? But yeah, it depends, I guess, what your target dose of magnesium is, and, budgeting and all of that. But I wanted to ask you, Carolyn, about like magnesium retention, because, I enjoy Facebook forums and they can be dangerous. But people comment some interesting things, and there's this thing going around that I don't need to supplement magnesium anymore because I'm retaining it, because I'm taking boron or copper or whatever they say. I think boron's the big one to retain magnesium, because some people taking 100 milligrams a day. But I wanted to talk about like retention and cofactors, because I don't know if those are synonymous. There's like B6, right, and different things with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. And it is in the realm of theorizing, because there haven't been any good nutrition studies on dietary supplements since they just named them all and then they turned away. So it is, we're just making things up and experimenting. But magnesium, I know for a fact that magnesium is very dynamic. And it'll go out of your body when you're under stress. If I eat 2 cups of yogurt 2 days in a row, I start getting heart palpitations, because the calcium is bumping out my magnesium. That's how dynamic magnesium is. So as I said, I've done experiments where, I'll go a day or so without taking my ReMag and do okay. But then I know if I went longer, I would start getting my symptoms back. Now, that does not mean I'm addicted to magnesium. It's just and it may mean I have an extra requirement for it, but it's food. Mm-hmm. Are you going to say, well, stop eating food and you'll be fine because you've got storage of whatever? Yeah, I mean, the keto people will say that, and I do intermittent fast, and I've gotten to the point where I only need 2 meals a day, but I think it's because I take all my nutrients. I take, low potency, well absorbed nutrients, and so my body's not fighting through the food to try to get the nutrients. There's no way I would ever say that you can stop your intake of magnesium and let other things take over. Boron, why do you want to go high dose boron all of a sudden? When you look at the way the thyroid hormones are made, there's a chain of about 9 reactions, as I understand it. I mean, I'm sure I'm just making this up too, but when you need the 9 minerals to make thyroid hormones, I envision that, okay, you've got your iodine. So you've got and all I do in my formulas is an RDA of iodine. I don't go high dose. And that RDA of iodine goes along, and then the next chemical interaction requires selenium. Good. And then the next one requires boron. Good. And then you go down the chain, molybdenum, zinc, they're all there. If you high dose iodine, for example, you're going to make so much of the next chemical that the selenium is not going to be able to cope, or the selenium is overutilized and it's not available to the other incredible things that it's supposed to be doing, which includes cancer reduction, cancer prevention, for Pete's sakes. And the same with boron. You front load this next chemical and then you utilize the next cofactor. That is not common sense. And that's what everybody is doing with these high dose of anything except magnesium. And I say that not laughing at all. I say it very seriously because you need it for 80% of non-metabolic functions. I mean, have people not heard that? And 1,000 enzyme functions, etc. And you have the fail-safe if you don't. If you take too much, the body will dump it. And where I heard that came from, Matt, is when civilization grew up near the oceans, and the ocean water has 3 times more magnesium than calcium. So food, fish and algae and whatnot from the ocean will give you more magnesium. So the body adapted to, we have enough magnesium. Oh, but maybe we don't have enough calcium. Okay, let's make the vitamin D work on that and, absorb it. And then what did we do in our society? We OD'd on fortifying everything with calcium and forcing women to take all this high dose calcium and just avoiding the heck out of magnesium.
Yeah, it's a great point about the balance. I enjoy watching the high dose stuff because it shows me like what's connected.
You're kamikaze. It's kamikaze. But I see what's connected. Yeah, they did that. They used to do that with when they started intravenous feeding. When they had to feed someone entirely intravenously, they would, put all these nutrients in it. And then, what will happen if we take out the zinc? And then they'd find out the side effects. That's what you're doing.
Yeah,
right?
no, and I'm mostly observing like vitamin D. I changed my mind on recently, largely because of genetics. Said it I think a million times now on the show, but I have a doctor friend that he showed himself midsummer on the beach shirtless, and he tested his 25-OHD was low, and it's because he had a mutation in the ability to synthesize it from ultraviolet light. It's called a DLCR7. It's basically the gene that controls the sulfation of cholesterol to make cholecalciferol. And it's a big deal. Like, some people really do need to supplement it, and it doesn't need to be 50,000, 100,000 international units. But I just realized recently, like, no matter how much sun someone gets, sometimes it is not enough. And it's not just because they have an infection. It could be genetics. There's always individual factors, right, with people. And
right.
But yeah, I did want to get your thoughts on that. Yeah.
I heard you in one of your podcasts. I forget who it was with. You said, and Dr. Carolyn Dean, she's taking 10,000 units of vitamin D. What's that about? And that's when I was doing my high dose vitamin D experiment. Because when I started to put out a D3K2 product, before that, I wanted to find out, I think I've got enough vitamin D. I live in Maui. I tan my leg. And I think I was taking a low dose vitamin D. My vitamin D was 19, 19. So I was below the 20, cutoff, or you're going to drop over. And I thought, that's interesting, because I didn't feel it. I mean, what are the vitamin D symptoms? And that's another crazy thing, is all the symptoms mash into one another. It's like the vitamin D deficiency symptoms look like magnesium deficiency. So I didn't know. So of course I started taking higher dose vitamin D with K2, because the K2 is important to push the calcium into the bones, as is magnesium. And my D went up, I'm in the 50s, 60s now, and that's fine. But my magnesium, which had RBC magnesium, had been up around 6, 8 or so, came down to 5.9, 5.8. So my extra vitamin D was using up the magnesium, which is what I talk about, and why I think a lot of vitamin D studies are screwed up because they don't look at magnesium. And that's, that's what a lot of people are missing. And then, you look at all the vitamin D research. It's big now because of the immune system. People think it's important. And, I had been told by people that, vitamin D is a hormone, so you only need a little. And if it's low, then it means the body doesn't need it anymore because it's a hormone. And then you look at the people who are, 100% doing vitamin D research, and they say, oh, yeah, they kind of pat people on the head. No, dear, no. It's, there's the, one part of the vitamin D goes to this hormone and takes care of the calcium. But then there's this whole other part that's not a hormone that does all the cell signaling and all the tissue stuff. And it's like, who are you going to believe anymore? And so I try to balance them both. It's like, instead of going for the 90 of vitamin D, okay, I'll go for 50, 60. And I don't want to be 19. And even though I didn't feel any different, with or without it, but maybe my magnesium is really working on the vitamin D that I had. It's crazy, but I hear what you're saying. I experiment on myself all the time. What did I do recently? I think I took high dose zinc, or it was something. And, I took too much of it. I mean, I knew, okay, I'm taking too much. I'm taking too much. And I kept taking it. And seriously, half an hour later, I was in the bathroom vomiting and with diarrhea, sweating head to toe. And then I took a shower, went and slept, and got up and felt great. So I had some sort of purge, right? And it's like, oh, yay!
Have you heard of the zinc test, Carolyn? Because I think this has been around for years, but the zinc sulfate, you drink, you take a teaspoon, 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It always tastes like water to me. And that seems like a legitimate, like there's science behind it.
Right.
And if it tastes like
it
water,
means you're deficient.
Right.
You're deficient. Oh, Matt. Oh, man.
Well, because I thought zinc was evil for the last couple of years. You get in these health camps where it's like this iron's evil, zinc's evil, vitamin D's evil. They will kill you, and it's like you get so scared, and you're just like, okay, and
Right.
you're the authority. But like, I think realizing that we're the authority, and we can experiment safely, and we don't have to fear as much, even though the world's crazy. And like what you said about magnesium and D. Like I talked to a guy earlier this year that had intravenous vitamin D. I think they gave him something crazy, like 100,000 IU for COVID or something. And this is on top of oral supplementation. And he ended up in the hospital with severe heart palpitations. And I was telling him, I'm like, man, you drained all your magnesium. That's why you had the heart palpitations.
Wow. That's awesome. I know it is kind of crazy, the people who tell you to go off vitamin D, zinc, and vitamin C right in the middle of COVID. Oh man, that was a bad move. That was a really bad move.
Yes.
And all these.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that proven, right? Yeah.
But all these things, if you take them in moderation, I mean, maybe a study will show. Well, like the whole potassium business, why they relegated people to a 99 milligram dose. You're aware of that, right? The only supplements you can get over the counter for potassium, the highest dose is 99 milligrams.
Wow.
Now, the RDA for potassium is 4,700. Okay. So you would have to take what, 47 47 doses to get your RDA of potassium. And anyway, that came up
Wow.
because there was some medical product back in the day of a potassium that was enteric coated. And when it made its way to the small intestine, it, broke down or whatever and caused ulceration of the small intestinal mucosa. So people thought that potassium is so horrible, it hurts people. But it was the other excipient in the formula. So they banned potassium, relegating people to, potassium purgatory for decades. And what I found in working with magnesium is, as you've probably read, potassium is, very intimate with magnesium. If you're not absorbing magnesium or don't think you're getting magnesium in effects as much as you think you should, then you could be low in potassium. If you're low in potassium, you have to have magnesium for potassium to absorb. They're just so interconnected. But because of this proscription against potassium, people just, they'd say, oh, take potassium broth or take this cream of tartar and stuff that you have no idea what the milligrams are. And so me, being the MacGyver that I am, I decided that I'd make a pico potassium. And instead of making a teaspoon dose of 99 milligrams, I had the chemist concentrate the potassium. So a quarter teaspoon was 99 milligrams. So that's the dose. So when people take a teaspoon, they're getting, almost 400 milligrams, which in this form is more like 800. So, they're getting a good chunk of potassium. So we've got people who are able to transfer off their potassium medications, which give them like 5,000 and 10,000 milligrams or milliequivalents, I think, of a potassium compound, which is very acidic and very hard to take. So anyway, potassium is very important.
That's cool. I didn't know you had a potassium product. And yeah, I was aware of some of that, but not that you can't buy over 99 milligrams. I was always curious, like when I see these electrolyte mixes at Costco or the health food store or whatever, and the sodium to potassium ratio is so reversed, even from a Google search. You search sodium to potassium ratio, and it's like 4-1, I think, potassium to sodium, and all these electrolyte drinks are like 5-1 sodium to potassium. Way more sodium.
I know. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, and athletes, you think of how they sweat out so much. I remember one military vet told me that in the Middle East, they'd take their t-shirts off at the end of the day, and they'd hang them up, and they'd turn into like boards with all the minerals that they sweated out. And what do they take for their electrolyte replacement? Sugar and salt. It's terrible. It's no wonder vets are so ill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What form is your pico potassium? Looking on your site, that looks pretty cool. Is it
liquid? It's a liquid. It's
okay.
The stabilized ion of potassium.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Wow. Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, me being way up here in North Idaho, for a while, I was trying to do the adrenal cocktail, and I stopped just because I was importing from all over the world. I'm getting Harmless Harvest coconut water from Thailand. I'm getting oranges from whatever, California, and it's just not natural nor sustainable. Some people would say, who cares? You're getting the nutrients, but I'd rather do something more sustainable than importing from all over the planet to get my nutrients.
Right.
It's like easier to do the liquid concentrates, I guess is what I'm getting at. So yeah, but once I'm in the greenhouse, hopefully I'll have my fresh oranges and stuff. So
oh my gosh, won't that be awesome? Good for you.
Yeah, appreciate. I actually have a little goji plant. Supposedly those do well here in greenhouses, goji berries. So remember that was like
Wow.
the OG superfood, right?
Yeah. 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 What is it that we have? Oh my gosh. Mangosteen. Remember the mangosteen fad? We sell mangosteens on the farm. They are seriously fun. Anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, Robert Cassar I used to attend his lectures. I was like his top student for like years, and he has a lychee farm, I think, on the Big Island. He'll text me pictures.
Mm,
He's like, taking these, selling these. It's like it's a big market, I guess, the lychee
oh
too.
yeah. Well, our lychee producer, I don't know if it's his farm, but they did not have a good crop this year.
Hmm.
So we had a shortened season, and they were more expensive than usual.
Mm.
But that's farming. That's farming.
Well, we're getting through our list here, Caroline. I think we're about halfway through. How about let's hit the top one, biohacking the body. I think you just wanted to share your philosophy on that because I know that term biohacking, it's kind of timely because that Los Angeles Dave Asprey conference was just happened. And I attended that like 4 years in a row. And supplements and devices, that's kind of my thing. I really like, seeing the latest stuff, but try not to fall for fads or things that are not effective or overpriced. So I love the vetting process of like supplements and devices. But yeah, their tech hall is kind of interesting. They have their
Mm,
exercise with oxygen, they have their hyperbaric chamber, their red light
mm,
companies, all the brain devices. But
yeah.
yeah, what's your philosophy on biohacking?
Well, okay. I'm in contact with a lot of young people here because of the farm, and when we sell up country, there's a lot of the young hippies are about, and I just get this sense in young people today that they don't have a mission. When my husband and I were young, we traveled to Europe. You take your year off and you travel. Kids aren't doing that anymore. We've got so many distractions. My husband calls it, that we have like 4 and 5 bodies. We've got our TV body, our computer body, our spiritual body, our physical body, and we're trying to manipulate all of them. We're meditating in the morning and smoking dope at night, and racing a car. Well, we're just trying to do it all because there's something about in a tribal society, you go out and do your vision quest. We don't have a vision quest for young people anymore. And I think there's a segment of society where young people are very involved with this body biohacking as their vision quest. And it's okay. So there's that part of what I'm thinking. The other part is, when I look at all the machinery and everything, I remember years ago saying, well, boys with toys. It's like we've got that, instead of in the tool shed, you've got these toys, lined up. I have them too, my massage units, my rollers, my this, my that. I was on one of these vibra boards until it threw my neck out and I gave it away. We're able to do it all and we're doing it all. But I guess my message would be, as you've been hearing, is, I've been through the roller coaster of all this. I knew these guys when they started. I know the terrain, and I think I've got some answers for people. But I think a lot of people are distracted. I know a lot of practitioners when they hear about my approach, give the body the building blocks and go from there. If we're dealing with their office managers will say, well, we can't make enough money because if we just sell 12 products, where's our overhead going to come from? Because a lot of these offices, I remember one doctor friend in New York said her overhead was 80%. So a lot of doctors are making their income from selling supplements. selling supplements is a huge industry, and it's gotten beyond just trying to give people something that will make them well. I kind of got into supplements in a bigger way because I had to with my figuring out my own ReMag, but also, I mean, back in 2008 or so, I was writing an online wellness program. I have 108 modules, and I was telling people everything they needed to do to stay healthy. The words were all there. It was totally awesome. And then with 2008, when the crash came, people said, I just don't have time to read it anymore. Tell me what to take, So, and I was doing, probably by that time, I was doing telephone consulting, and I would tell them what to take. And then I started questioning, well, what's good? What's not good? And it wasn't until 2012, 14 that I started having my own products. And by then I had enough information from, okay, they're trying to reduce the milligram potency of supplements. So stay low, stay food-based, get some absorption going. My own, laxative effect for magnesium was, a bonus, because I found a non-laxative magnesium, which can, change somebody's world. You get people who are on like 20 medications, and most of them are for magnesium deficiency. Mm. And yet I can't talk about that. This program will probably be banned.
I think I've said enough buzzwords the last 200 shows. Methylene blue was really the one that got me on social media. I'm still called shadow banned, and so where I should have so many more thousands. I don't care, but it's weird. I mean, that's just super synthetic. I mean, they've bashed it in the media, says fish tank cleaner, and it's one of those things that helps COVID. I mean, dramatically. So it's interesting. But
well, speaking of COVID, if you don't mind going there,
yeah.
The whole thing about hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin is they are ionophores, IONOPHORES, I think, where they open up cell mineral channels. That's their job. And what do they open them up to? Zinc. So if you've got zinc on board, then you're going to get helped when you do hydroxy or ivermectin. They don't do the job on their own. But if someone doesn't have zinc, because the protocols call for ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and zinc. So what I did with the pico zinc, which has 10 parts zinc and 1 part copper for that balance. So the pico zinc is a stabilized ion of zinc that goes right into the cells. It doesn't need an ionophore.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Yeah, the zinc thing's amazing, because it's like 300 enzymes, and it's required for testosterone and was it neurotransmitters like depression and anxiety can have a zinc deficiency connection, right?
Right. Yeah, I often said that magnesium has the most enzyme processes that it supports, and zinc is number 2. And copper, I think, is 50, but copper, they're all awesome. I mean, you take away any one of these minerals and, you're down. So it's not about saying, well, any one mineral is the king. They all work together. We just have to get that across to people. The whole iodine fad, people doing 50 milligrams of iodine. I mean, that was horrific. That caused so many problems in certain people. It started as a cancer treatment, and then, everybody picked it up. And I don't know, when you look at the RDA of iodine being like 150 micrograms, and people are taking 50 milligrams, that's horrendous. And what I said about the thyroid hormones, you're causing a real imbalance in your mineral chain when you're using too much of one thing, except for magnesium.
That's a good point. Yeah, a lot of the iodine supplements I see, like the pills, it's like one capsule is 12.5 milligrams, which seems reasonable. We're not getting up to 50 or 100. According to my genetics, I have higher iodine needs, so that's interesting. But let's see, what's the next? Hair analysis. This is so like HTMA. This is actually a really heated argument. I'm going to interview one of my friends next month on it because he's seen real results working with clients with mineral balancing, especially in the context of like, what minerals detoxify what heavy metals, and seeing it shift in the direction that he expected based on testing before and after. So I know some people say they're useless, and then there's probably some people that say it's the most important, where the truth is maybe in between.
Well, I studied HTMA in my naturopathic training, and there were so many caveats. And when I went, I didn't take to it. I just thought there's too many caveats, which is like in autism, a child may have high mercury in the hair or low mercury in the hair and be mercury toxic. It's like, so how do you know that? And when I had my HTMA done just a few years ago, this person said, "Oh, your magnesium is so high. And it's thrown off all your other ratios. Oh, I don't know what to say about this. I'll get back to you." And he never did. So if you're saturated in magnesium, that throws off their charts. People are using HTMA averages or ratios. You have to be in between this and that. They're using them on a sick population. They don't know what a healthy population is. And therefore, it's like I was saying with blood tests, the blood tests are testing sick people. So the ratios are all about sick people. How do you know? And I think the people who were HTMA analysis works, they probably have an intuitive psychic component going, where they just say, "Oh yeah, this means, okay, I got this." It's not something that I think you can train someone to do unless they have, like I said, some sort of psychic input. It's the same. I mean, I saw that in New York, actually. It just came to me. There was this doctor we used to send our HIV patients to for their stool analysis. And he would look at fresh stool analysis to find the parasites. And he was like a parasite whisperer. He would find parasites, whereas, well, nobody else ever said I had parasites. What's that all about? It's like, you know what I'm saying? And for all those reasons, I got away from doing a lot of testing. And I would just say, well, let's just keep you healthy. And certainly with the ReMag and all the other minerals and products I use, it gives people the support so that their body can take over, even in detoxification. I think we mentioned, how someone's going to walk into a naturopath and, "Oh yeah, you got to detox," and totally flip them out. If you detox the liver first, you start dumping all the viruses that are harbored in the liver and can really cause someone to feel very ill. So what I see happening with our customers is, they may start on ReMag and then they'll take more and more. And after a few months, they're feeling good. And then the detox kicks in and they start saying, "Oh my gosh, I've got a coated tongue. I feel I've got yeast symptoms," if they know what yeast is, or, they just tell us they've got a rash. And we say, "Oh yeah, you're just dumping your yeast now. Here, take some Pico Silver and Flora Revive. You're ready for it." So it's, to me, as I said at the beginning, I've been at this for over 50 years and just created kind of a nice gradual approach to helping people just raise themselves up. And I thought I would be doing this one-on-one with people until I died. But with the company, and I've written 22 ebooks, and I've got 12 customer service people. They're all on the products. So they just guide people. Oh, take this. Well, I still don't sleep well. How much ReMag are you taking? Well, I cut back, so it's okay, take more.
Mm-hmm.
Because people,
sorry,
your
go
turn.
ahead. Well, I was going to say, do you think people are deficient in everything? Because that's something I've been kind of meditating on. Everything meaning, B vitamins, we have magnesium, zinc, copper, potassium, like kind of going back to HTMA, because some people think it's like a matter of just balancing out things that are low. My hypothetical is like, are most people low in almost everything? That's to say, like when you start giving them, the 4,000 milligrams of potassium and enough magnesium, that will start to just balance them out overall, right? At least start the process.
It starts the process, but yeah, you're right. I think that's the way I've been operating, as if, you're low in everything, take low dose of everything and you'll slowly get better, rather than, oh my gosh, I think I'm low in this, I'm going to take a whole bunch of it. And then you throw everything else out off balance. And that sounds exactly like how I've been approaching, my health and with the customers as well. We really can't, we don't know more than the body. I mean, intellectually, if we say, well, you may have heard people say something like, well, oh, your thyroid is off and your adrenals are off. We got to treat your adrenals first before we go to your thyroid. No, treat them both at the same time, for Pete's sake. How can you separate them? They don't separate themselves. When the adrenals start crashing, they'll pull on the thyroid, and the thyroid will eventually crash, or the thyroid, with chlorine blocking the receptors, or yeast toxins blocking the receptors, your thyroid is gone. Or you've had more than one baby and your thyroid is tanking. So to me, it means most people are low, have a weakened thyroid, and they just need the minerals to support their thyroid hormone production.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up chlorine, because I was raised, in my backyard. My parents set up that above ground pool with a little chlorine floating duck, and it was, I'd always smell it on my skin, and then when I got into my teens, I would sneak into hotel jacuzzis with my friends and pools, and just and then showered in tap water the first 20 years of my life. And looking back, like I was looking at what chlorine depletes, and iodine and ascorbic acid kept coming up for me. I was like, wow. And I probably wasn't getting much of that too my entire life.
Right. Yeah, I know that there was a time when I just, seriously, I wrote a book called Death by Modern Medicine. I don't know if you've come across that. Mm-hmm. So Death by Modern Medicine, 600-700 pages of just all the horrors in the world. I said that's, I wrote it on a bad day. All my other books are very positive. So I know what's out there. I know how bad it is, but myself, I feel better now in my 70s than I did in my 30s, because I was, blessed enough to be told to write this book on magnesium, basically. So I found out my Achilles heel, my major weakness. And in terms of the genetic testing, you brought that up, and I forgot to comment that I tend not to recommend those to people at the outset, and hardly ever anyway. Well, first of all, because your genetic information is stolen, for one thing. The Chinese have it now, sorry. And secondly, I don't want to know my top 100 gene mutations. that, maybe I can't do anything about in my mind. And it freaks people out, which actually brings me to maybe our last topic, but I'm happy to keep going. um, do you know about total biology and German New Medicine?
Some friends have asked me to look into it, and I'm just so busy here with my goats and chickens and stuff that I haven't had time to look into it.
Okay, let me give you a quick overview. So German New Medicine is, it was created by a German doctor, Gerd Hammer. Hammer's son was shot, fatally wounded by some, European nobility. So he couldn't do anything about it. He was at his son's bedside for 3 months while he was dying. As a doctor, he couldn't help him. 3 months after his son died, he developed testicular cancer, and his wife developed ovarian cancer as the mind's way of getting the body to create a new offspring.
Wow.
So that was his introduction to, oh my gosh, what's going on here? He's since passed. He was an oncologist, a cancer doctor, and a psychiatrist. He went to all his cancer patient files and found that every one of his cancer patients had an irresolvable conflict before they were diagnosed. So he began, studying studying all his files, and then looking at what he could find of their brain scans and MRIs, and a non-contrast MRI of their brains. He realized by, looking through probably thousands of them, that the cancer location matched up with the area in the brain of a circle of kind of disfigurement that would disappear when the conflict was resolved. It sounds like voodoo, but it's actually very scientific and pretty awesome, because if cancer is a conflict, we can deal with conflict. My conflict was I was moving to Maui, and I was afraid of getting in the ocean. I had a water fear. I almost drowned a couple times. I'm a quadruple Pisces, so I love the water. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm moving to Maui. And I had been studying German New Medicine through the French version called Total Biology. So my teacher said to the class, phone up your relatives and find out the conflicts in the ancestors. So, okay, I have a water fear. I found out from my aunt in Scotland that I had 3 relatives, male relatives in their 20s, who drowned in a dory. They call them dories, going across a bay during a big storm to try to get a doctor to come to across the bay to a home birth.
Wow.
So that's a story. How did I try to resolve that? In my 20s, the same age as these guys, I went into med school. How did I resolve the swimming stuff? I said to myself consciously, look at you. You're going to be a doctor and you're afraid of water. You can't even swim properly. So I went into the nurse's residence pool and put my face in, took it out, put my face in, took it out, taught myself to swim. And then I guess the third thing is I consciously decided, my husband and I, we didn't want to have kids. So I would never be forced to have a home birth or be at a home birth. And I would be a doctor, and, I put people in hospital for a home birth. Because I did alternative medicine, the first thing that I got was people wanting me to do home births. And I said, no. So when I found out the words, whatever, so 20s, I'm in my 60s or 40 years later, I found out about these ancestors. I said, man, I picked up a fear of water, fear of drowning, fear of home births, fear of blah blah in my biology. I can drop that, and I seriously dropped it. I'm out there swimming over reef sharks and just flipping around, and I'll be flipping around by my husband. He does laps, so I'll be flipping around. One day a guy came over as I was off somewhere else, and he thought, "Oh, is that your son?" Me, is that your son? So anyway, total biology, you can hold a fear, ancestrally. Maybe those words were spoken when I was a child. Oh, did you hear about the drownings, 50 years ago? Who knows how I heard about it? Maybe it's in our gene pattern. You hear about Louise Hay, her correspondences, and we call total biology in German new medicine Louise Hay on steroids. It's just so awesome. Someone who has a pain in their neck, and you say to them, "Well, who's bothering you? Who's the pain in your neck in your life?" And I can't swallow that. So you've got gut problems, or he's a pain in the ass. So you have some sort of colon problem. It is that direct, where it's almost the primitive brain that's trying to solve a conflict by putting the problem in the body, either to call attention to it or because breast cancer. I mean, this is incredible. A mother, her child will have an accident. She'll be in intensive care, and the mother develops extra milk duct tissue to create more milk to nurture the child, even if she's way past that. So the conflict is trying to find a solution. And if a woman in that case, the conflict is resolved, then this growth, it starts to break down. And that's when it can become symptomatic, and you go to the doctor, "Oh, there's a lump, you've got cancer, you're going to die." And if a woman can get a total biology consult in the middle of that, find the conflict, resolve it, the breast tumor does disappear.
Wow.
And, this is stuff that is very much blocked or whatever. There's a whole huge bias against it, because it will, it takes away all the allopathic approach to, and it's not just cancer, it's colds and flus, and every part of the body can be affected. But it totally, just one last sentence, it totally took away my fear of cancer. That's what I can say.
Wow. Yeah. Did they ever use dream therapy or talk about different ways to do it? Because I know like psychedelic therapy is popular now, but when I was like 12 or 13, my brother introduced me to a lucid dreaming online forum. I started on my old PC, a text file, and started logging, got my dream recall up, and then got my lucid dreaming up, and just being more aware of like recurring dreams. Like I often had one that my house got bombed, kind of like Dresden style, and it was just very traumatic. And it was just a recurring dream over and over and over, getting bombed on my house. And just kind of, I wonder if that's a peek into our ancestry to kind of see recurring dreams, and that could be kind of a window or a pathway through.
Oh yeah. Oh sure. Any of that. If you want to get an answer to something, you program yourself as you're going to bed, let me solve this, let me do this. I mean, people say, and I say, the only reason I've been able to do so much, write the dozens and dozens of books and do this and do that, is because I'm solving issues, in another world, in my so-called dream time. We live in other worlds. I mean, this is not all there is. That's for sure. But yeah, any of that. I mean, if we just say to ourselves, give me the answer, I can handle the answer, because that's part of the problem. If you're, going to be fearful when you wake up in that lucid dream, then that just snaps you back. But yeah, it's so useful. But I like it when we do it for ourselves. I don't want to be I learned hypnosis at one point, and I thought, no, I don't want to be in someone else's brain, or vice versa. So there are things that I'd rather do on my own. I mean, look what Jesus said: "This miracle you can do, and much more." I thought, okay, I'm in.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so fascinating, and
yeah,
and then you just add the magnesium, it's ReMag, and then now you're really rocking.
No question.
That's awesome. Let's see. We're starting to get near the end here. I wanted to ask you, like, we hit most of the topics. I think we didn't cover few of them, but maybe I could have you back on. But enemas, I wanted to ask, because I heard this theory, like, that enemas deplete magnesium and depletes your minerals. Did you ever get into? I think I got one colonic, and then I went really heavy into coffee enemas there for a while, and I was taking turpentine at the same time.
I've done coffee enemas so much I became addicted to coffee. So I'd wake up in the morning and withdrawal and have to have a coffee enema. I mean, that's how bad it was. I think that's my most extreme experiment. I think coffee enemas are great. Because I take all my minerals, I don't worry about losing minerals in an enema. What I worry about is the probiotics. So I make sure after I do a coffee enema, and I still do like one a week at least, I make sure I put in a probiotic as a little implant at the end. So that keeps my minerals going, and I make sure I'm eating some sauerkraut every day or every 2 days.
That's awesome.
A good sauerkraut with, someone who makes it with several organisms. That's your best bet for probiotics.
Yeah, it's a good idea to put it in the enema too. It's wild. There's these groups where they're all posting their worms that came out of them, and I took copper and did one, and this came out of me, and it's fascinating. I mean, the whole parasite topic. I'm going to do my first GI stool map test in the next few weeks, and it's funny. Some people say it's inaccurate, or this one's better. Or everyone has an opinion with the testing, right?
Well, I mean, I really did learn it when we were doing the HIV treatment in New York. It was what do you call it? A clinical trial. I learned that you have to have a fresh stool sample, or it doesn't show. The fixatives you put the stool in will shrink up eggs and parasites, so they can't be seen. So until we get the blood organism antibody test perfected, we won't know. And I don't know if we can get there, because there's so many thousands and thousands of organisms. How do you identify? And again, I just, I used to think, oh yeah, deworm everybody a couple times a year. And now I say, oh, I'm deworming because I'm doing my pico silver every day and my Flora Revive. I'm good.
Yeah. I do cigars, not every day though. No.
Right. Oh, I know the whole tobacco thing. I really loved it. I belong to a circle in New York, and we would pass the tobacco and do ceremony. I mean, tobacco is a ceremonial herb, for Pete's sakes.
Yeah, I love going out in my lake. I have a little rowboat, and it's just very relaxing, and go out there and look at the bats flying around. And
right.
Do you want to do some rapid fire questions here, Carolyn, at the end? Questions
Sure.
that these are listener questions they sent in. You did actually you covered probably half of them just in our conversation. So I'll pick the good ones. This is a really common one, and I see it in my little community circle, whatever. Thoughts on getting sodium and potassium levels up before starting magnesium? Because there's a meme out there that you want to take sodium and potassium for 6 months minimum before you start a magnesium. Otherwise, it's a waste or whatever. But.
Well, that's interesting and good to bring that up, because I usually mention this at some point in an interview. I tell people before you start any of my formulas to start drinking sea salted water. Boom. But you don't have to do it for 6 months. That's ridiculous. So what it is hydration is so important, because we need our minerals in the cells to make the mitochondria work. And I love the name of your mitochondria. Mito is so awesome. I love mitochondria because, a lot of the steps in the Krebs cycle require magnesium. The aliens just came in. I heard aliens.
That might have been the bucket, unless we had interference of a ET tuning in.
Yeah. So hydration is 1,000% important. And my hydration formula is you take your body weight in pounds, divide that in half, and drink that many ounces of some sort of purified water. And in every liter of that water, you put a 1/4 teaspoon of a good sea salt that has some color to it. If you're using a white sea salt, it's been processed and it's lost its minerals. So you have to be drinking that water. And, part of what, my liquid minerals, why I think they're important, is because you dilute them in water and it causes you to drink enough water. People aren't drinking enough water. So I totally agree with the sodium chloride in water. You don't have, what did you say? Was it sodium and potassium before magnesium?
Yeah, just to be able to retain it or utilize it, because you were talking about the potassium magnesium connection. My question is, can't you just do them all at once? Like, why would it be different? I don't know.
Yeah, you would do them all at once. And what I found with our magnesium and the sea salted water, people did exceptionally well. It was only a smaller percentage that maybe they weren't doing their bone broth or their potassium vegetables. And that's where I felt I had to go to a potassium supplement. But they all go together. So why would you separate them? Heaven forbid.
Yeah. So this is a hot topic, and this is my last show with Caitlin Hartigan of the Iron Protocol. And one of the things that changed my mind on this year was iron deficiency. She's an expert on it. She's polled people in Facebook groups and heard feedback. And someone was just curious, your thoughts on iron in general, because basically there's some people that say iron deficiency does not exist, period. Everyone's overloaded. And then I think and then there's people that are iron deficient that said nobody's overloaded. I've heard that too. I mean, it's always like the truth is in the middle, right?
Absolutely. But the extremes get the hits. People talk extremes so that they can get the hits and the clicks. Well, I never went to iron supplementation because women don't need it. And perhaps until menopause. And even then, early on in my practice, I had a person who had the iron overload syndrome, hemosiderosis, and that was an eye opener to me. So I've always been aware of it and stayed away from supplementing iron. And then when I look at iron deficiency and absorption and all that, I think, okay, well, you're taking, in terms of what I recommend, you're taking your whole seed vitamin C. So that's helping iron absorption from your food. You're taking copper in your ReMag. So that's helping your iron absorption. So I think, in my world, people are keeping up with their iron. with my customers, I never hear anyone except a pregnant woman say, well, I think I have iron deficiency anemia. And then there's liquid irons that they can take. So but I certainly have heard of people saying, yeah, I took high dose iron, or someone lecturing about high dose iron. It really helped. Seriously, anything you take will help. The placebo effect will make that happen. And then, what the body will do is kind of try to negotiate this, assault. And in the negotiation of the assault, you will feel different, and you can think, oh, I'm feeling better. See what I mean? To me, it's the same as cold shock therapy and heat shock therapy. What is it? I forget his name. Hope. I'm sorry. Wilhelm Hoff. Yeah. Getting people in the cold, and then, oh my gosh, all the parameters. Look, the blood tests, they look so much better and everything. The body is thinking you're killing it, for Pete's sakes. It thinks that you're dying. It goes into shock. It puts out adrenaline. It puts out human growth hormone. It will do all these things to save your life. And how many times are you going to do that and then overuse and deplete all those nutrients that are needed to create these elevations? The adrenaline and everything. That's where your magnesium goes when you're in fight or flight constantly with stress and everything. There's where your magnesium goes to create the adrenaline. So I do not believe in these shock things. I've had too many people who've come, with the side effects from them. You hear the good bits, but maybe not so much the bad bits. The bad bits of too much sauna therapy is you sweat out all your minerals. If you're not replacing minerals that are properly and easily absorbed, you're just taking mineral compounds. You're taking a list. Oh yeah, check. Oh yeah, check that one. Check. Okay, I took them all, but if you're not absorbing them, it's not going to help.
That's a good point. Yeah, I definitely have gotten some highs from. I was doing the ice bath 6 years ago, and I think they do it right in Russia, where it's a plunge. It's not a mind over matter, staying there for 20 minutes. You get in and you get out.
Right.
And that's how it's traditionally done, not a machismo, 15-minute. But yeah. Interesting, your thoughts on iron. Yeah. My experience is I was convinced that I had iron overload because I was convinced that everyone did. And I did this calculation that someone told me, 365 times my age, and that's how many milligrams of iron I have in my body based on 1 milligram per day. So supposedly I was supposed to have 12,500 milligrams in my body. So I just started donating blood every 2 months, and only did 2. And the first one I felt Superman, and then the second one, it almost killed me. I felt horrible, and I haven't recovered from the fatigue since. And so I got my iron panel done. My ferritin was low, under 100, which is low. My saturation was 12%, which is very low. That's definite iron deficiency. And my serum iron was low, which doesn't say much. But the saturation being low, that is everything. And so, yeah, there's those contexts too, where it's like you don't donate too much blood because someone told you it's really important. That can be harmful too. That could cause the iron problem. So yeah, definitely not placebo for me. The fatigue was real from donating.
Yeah. Wow. Like I said, wild west, you're doing the experiment.
Yeah, it's nothing you can't. I'm a resilient guy, so it's more fun for me. Like, oh, not feeling good for a month or two. Let's have fun getting back to balance. It's like.
Well, but what's interesting? Okay, let me just say this, Matt. You're a young guy and all the rest of it. There are forums out there that are attracting very sick people, and they will be told to do this, that, or the other. And it can be overwhelming for them, the information. And if they do it, they can get in trouble. And it's like, I think I said something like this on an iodine forum once. And it was almost like, well, you win some, you lose some. And that attitude, it just floored me. And I said to myself, okay, these are just people who haven't done the Hippocratic oath thing. I mean, I did cross my fingers behind my back when I said it anyway, but at the same time, it's like first do no harm. And I don't want to harm one person. So you can't take the attitude of, well, some people be helped. Yeah, some people, they won't be helped. And I don't know how to rein that in, because, people will seek out these forums and look for someone to tell them what to do. And then, they can suffer the consequences. Buyer beware.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. Yeah. And if you're just looking to optimize your health and you don't have a serious chronic illness, then maybe there's more room and play for experimentation. But yeah, a lot of people are really unwell and do have a serious chronic ailment where you have to be a little more careful.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good one. Is magnesium citrate really that bad? We had a few people ask that.
Oh, right. I heard about that attack on magnesium citrate. And I don't know. I mean, I couldn't find a study that talked about it. I personally had Dr. Andrea Rosanoff. She's a magnesium expert, and she consulted for a company that used magnesium citrate for decades. That was Natural Calm. Mm-hmm. And actually, I spoke at conferences where with Natural Calm and did some consulting with them myself. I never in the 20 years that I knew about Natural Calm did I ever hear anyone having a problem with magnesium citrate. So I don't know where that could possibly come from. And is it are they equating citrate with citric acid, and the whole vitamin C thing is not good for to me, it didn't make any sense. And that's all I can say. Makes no sense.
I didn't even hear about the attack. Sorry, I had to swat a fly. Bugs getting into the cabin.
Uh-oh.
Didn't want to get away. I didn't hear about that attack on citrate. That's interesting. Yeah, some people demonize the citrate compound and say it's harmful in and of itself. And I've taken zinc citrate and I feel awesome from it. So I don't know what that's about. But
zinc citrate. I think that was a compound used in zinc lozenges. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure.
I think all the zinc gummies too use it, and which they taste good.
Seriously, there's so many. You can hear negative about anything. That's why I have so many customer service people, because people phone up, what about this? What about that? And it used to be you see something in print, you see something on the internet, and you think it's real, but not necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of fear. So kind of circling back, we had a bunch of people asking, because I said I was interviewing you about yeast overgrowth too, and you mentioned your Flora product, but someone asked, is yeast overgrowth connected to heavy metals, and how to get rid of it, and maybe the candida connection, kind of all that.
Right. I guess the connection with yeast is that mercury can act like an antibiotic and kill off good bacteria, and therefore it can be associated with yeast. I mean, that's what comes to mind. The thing with yeast toxins, there's about 78 of them, and when you have a leaky gut, they can be absorbed through the intestines and get into the bloodstream, and they can cause a lot of havoc. I mean, that can be the brain fog, and you can have yeast growing in the sinuses, so you can have plugged sinuses, plugged ear ducts, coated tongue. You can have postnasal drip from the sinuses. I mean, the symptoms are just head to foot. And And it occurs, you get yeast overgrowth. The yeast are supposed to stay in your large intestine. You take an antibiotic or birth control pill. Oh, the antibiotic kills off good and bad bacteria. And then the yeast are, bouncing around. Hey, we got room to grow. And they grow up into your small intestine. And then all the things that cause leaky gut can then lead to the toxins being absorbed. I don't like to say that the yeast organisms are absorbed. Some people doing the dark field microscopy will say that they'll see yeast in the blood. I'm sure that can happen. But the yeast overgrowth I'm talking about is intestinal yeast, or, yeast that will be in all the mucous membranes. So, head and neck, vaginal, anal, you can pass yeast, sexual transmission. So I think it's just something that's really with us. As I said earlier, the diet, the stress, everything is sort of focuses toward yeast overgrowth.
Can apple cider vinegar make it worse? Someone asked. The yeast overgrowth.
I was never good with apple cider vinegar. It was too acidic for me, so I haven't personally tested it, but something tells me that people talk about it as a kind of an antifungal. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, that's where you can kamikaze test it on yourself.
Yeah, I was raw vegan hardcore for about 4 years, and my dinner every night was a whole head of lettuce, and I would always use olive oil and apple cider vinegar as my dressing. And that seemed to do pretty well for me. Felt like it felt good in my gut.
Well, they talk about taking a few tablespoons before a meal to help your stomach acidity. I think that works for a lot of people. I think that's helpful. Can be helpful.
Yeah. Let's see, maybe one or two more here. Is there a specific time to take magnesium, or are there things we shouldn't take with it?
I look at it as a food. So, just take it as you would eat a food anytime during the day. This whole business about taking calcium separate from this or that, separate from that, that's not how plants do it. Mm-hmm. In a plant, you'll have all the minerals. So you get them all together. So the body's used to that. But magnesium, because it's needed in the cells, but it can run out of the body, urine and bowels kind of easily. I get people, I've been drinking out of my cup all morning here. I get people to put their amount of minerals in their sea salted water and try to drink it through the day. Everyone's walking around now with a water bottle, so that's easy enough. Mm-hmm. And by doing that through the day, then you're putting little aliquots of water and minerals in your body. You're not overloading your cells, so you're getting it spaced out. People say, "Oh, I'm going to take it all at once." Then you can give yourself the laxative effect because you've overloaded your cells, and the body, okay, I'm full. So throughout the day.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I went to college, I would carry around a glass growler, and I had this routine where I would put it in the refrigerator, cool the water. I would ozonate it for sometimes 30 minutes, and then it would hold the ozone in the water all day from morning until late evening, the end of my day. I was shocked. Like I would still taste the ozone at like 8 o'clock.
Wow, that's awesome. Very good.
Until the campus police pulled me over and thought I was drinking alcohol on the campus. But
we used to, when Bob and I traveled, we traveled with a little water jug, and we had something called the D cell in it. It was a little cement block that was a water purifier. And actually it's now evolved into a 400-pound cement block for purifying water. But at the time, we'd be drinking it, and we were pretty bubbly and happy people. And we felt, I don't know if we told them we had drugs in it or acid or whatever. We might have just said, "Oh, it's a D cell, it purifies the water," and they'd take a drink and think, they would think they got high from it. Because seriously, the placebo effect, the positive effect of just what you say is as powerful as the negative effect. And the fear-based stuff that's going on these days, we really have to stay away from it. Or the anger. Here's something that I wanted to share. I hate that word. This is something I wanted to say. If I'm angry at someone else, it's like me taking poison and expecting the other guy to die. So you cannot keep anger going. And that's part of the German New Medicine total biology message as well. Is if you've got a conflict in your brain, get it out, talk it out, write it out, just dump it, because it's just festering in your brain.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, and that's so timely with social media and the internet, because I have to take breaks usually every 5 weeks or so. I'll just take a week off of looking at my messages and stuff like that, and everyone just wants to battle and debate and be right and prove you wrong, and it's just exhausting. And I think it's just that part of human psychology that wants to just suck energy from other people. But I think that wanting to do that probably comes from mineral dysregulation, right? And like not being fulfilled and not,
well, people tell me the gramophone thoughts and the worries and and the paranoia, I'm going to die. They say that will go away when they're saturated. Well, when they take magnesium, especially my ReMag. I've had people say, I took one dose and my mind just calmed down. I mean, that's crazy. So the body is looking for that solution, and it will use it. I mean, that's what's so amazing about supplements that work, because you do feel them right away. You will. I mean, there are people though who are very toxic and they have to go drip by drip. And that's where they need sort of the support,
Yeah. I bought my own like sensory deprivation float tank a couple of years ago, which is a challenge to have off grid. So I have to like basically turn it on before I'm going to use it. It's the heaters are a lot of juice, but yeah, speaking of finding conflict, I mean, I've had like memories surface just from being there in silence. The 1,200 pounds of magnesium. It's like, all the shakes, and it's like, a little flash of a memory that I forgot. And there's so many therapies out there that you can find, but that one's pretty cool because it's combining with the magnesium.
Oh wow, absolutely, but someone to talk to too. It's hard to do it all in your own head. I mean, diaries help and all the rest of it, but it is good to have someone to talk with. Yeah,
I'm fortunate to have a really good relationship with an awesome lady, and that's hard to find nowadays. And that's that aspect to it. If it's not a community, if it's at least one person in a healthy relationship, not always arguing. Both have enough magnesium. But awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun, Carolyn. Really appreciate you coming on. And I look at you as the original magnesium person. I mean, like you said, you started in the 70s, right? So
yeah, it's been a while, and thank goodness I got into what I did, because it helped my health. I think, we're all if you're driven, I always thought I had the great work, ahead of me. And I've gotten there as far as I'm concerned. So I'm very happy for that. And I would just encourage people to be, keep the motivation going, never stop. I mean, once you stop, you sit down, I'm happy. I'm happy with my food stamps, or I'm happy not to work. This is seriously, that is just the road to perdition. It's just not going to be useful. in the future for either the person or the planet. We all have to keep active.
I love that. Yeah, I just turned 35 a few days ago, and sometimes,
Woo!
sometimes people chronologically older than me will say, "Well, just wait till you retire, or you won't be doing this forever." And it's like, yeah, I want to be doing
Oh,
this forever. It's like, just like won't you get tired after a while? It's just nonstop stuff. But it's if you're doing what you love, right? Like what you're doing, you don't get tired,
exactly.
and you just want to keep doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. And I'm very fortunate. I ended up in paradise and still and able to do more because then I found the farm and to be able to help the farm stay active and expand. I mean, it's just awesome. I take
Yeah.
in your word. You use awesome a lot. I think it's a great word. It's great.
Probably overuse it, but yeah, I'm jealous of the fruit that you have over there. I mean, I'm gonna do subtropical here, which I
Mm,
can do because I'm trenching a 5-foot perimeter around the dome, and then I just got ICF blocks, the big foam blocks delivered last week, like 400
mm.
plus of them. So that's its own insulation. So, but then
Oh,
there's like a pond inside, koi pond I'm gonna do, which has a little heat feature
wow.
in it, to
Wow.
maintain
Yeah,
the heat. So it should be fun to see what I could do with avocados and citrus, which I think will be
right.
fine up here. But over there, you have like papayas and mangoes and everything, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's like a candy store. So with the pond, then you'll have your humidity, you'll have the warmth from the pond, but and what kind of heat will you use in it?
Just the Earth's heat. So it's a company out of Colorado, Growing Spaces. They've been around, I think it's like 20 to 30 years. And there's different kits out there you can buy for the domes. This is just one of the ones I vetted, and they have a YouTube channel that's pretty cool. But yeah, the basic idea is well, depending on your climate, if it's a warm climate, you can just plop it right on the ground. But here where I'm
Mm.
at, I'm tapping into the Earth's temperature, which is,
Um,
I think, 5 feet down. It's like a constant 54 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere around there.
um,
But with the blocks, I think it's going to be even warmer. So it's going to like warm the ground under there, and then that's going to kind of
um,
retain it. So I'm really curious because the winters up here aren't too cold. Like last winter, I think it got down to zero or negative 2 or 3 degrees Fahrenheit for like a week or two, but it's not that
mm,
bad. And I'm really curious to see like in February walking into that dome how warm it's going to be. But
mhm,
yeah, I think the
mhm,
pond absorbs heat when it's excess because it gets like in the 90s in the summer here, so it
uh-huh.
it absorbs the heat and then it'll release the heat, when it cools down. But supposedly you don't need a wood stove or any kind of heater in there with all this stuff going. And I think the plants
Mm.
generate some type of heat in the
Yeah,
roots, I believe.
right, right. Oh, that's wonderful. I was going to say awesome, but I switched to wonderful. But and you could take in a little space heater if you had a bad, winter. I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I thought about putting in a wood stove. I mean, some people think, the global warming thing, scam, which I think it probably is, but like they think it's
I
opposite
agree.
global
I
cooling.
agree.
So we're going to an ice age, which I hope not. But then one of my neighbors up here was like, yeah, we're in a really interesting climate where if the whole world cooled up here, it would actually get warmer. I don't know how it works,
Oh,
but he described it to me, I guess. So, but over
well,
there,
I,
it'd probably be like,
yeah, I'm fine here for, yeah, year round. It's like 80s, so it's pretty awesome.
there's awesome. Is there the volcano issue? is Kilauea, or up here we have Mount St. Helens? That's one of the fears, right?
Oh,
That these volcanoes are going to blow.
right.
Takes,
Well, yeah, the volcanoes over on Big Island,
mm,
and there's some activity all the time. So there's volcanic organic gases,
mm,
VOG, that comes this way if our trade winds kind of stop blowing. So we have a trade wind that blows over Maui, keeps it, cool enough. We never get into hundreds ever. And it blows away the bog. So again, awesomeness.
Wow. But I think I think there are good minerals though from that ash, right? That you can get.
Yes. Yeah. But even so, when I started with the farm and tried to go vegetarian once again, I ate only from the farm, and my magnesium deficiency kicked right in. So I know you're not getting the minerals from Mount Haleakala here.
Yeah. I wonder too. I wanted to say this earlier in the show because I'm sure you're using your brain a lot. I've used my brain a lot just with the unnatural amount of just having the internet, like the amount of brain power we need, the RAM to navigate through modern life. I think a theory is that we're just using our nutrient requirements are just higher because we're using our brain more than our ancestors did.
I would think so, because they've done studies showing that when your brain is active, you're burning more glucose. It uses more, per weight than the rest of the body. So yeah, I think that's highly accurate, because when you're burning glucose, you're using all the cofactors to create the energy and all the rest of it. So obviously that's all the minerals and the B vitamins, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fascinating. Well, this was so much fun, and I'll put the link to your website. You have a lot of cool stuff we didn't talk about. You have face creams and what else? There's your balm, ReMag balm, and that's cool. Yeah, you have all the minerals in liquid form. The Flora Revive sounds pretty cool. I've been playing around with the Boulardi. I befriended a doctor recently up here, and really smart guy. It's been, friends with the Thorn owner and stuff. And we were talking for 3 hours a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "Yeah, I've helped people heal their gut issues with Boulardi in 2 weeks. Just here, take this whole bottle." And he was saying the only downside is diarrhea, I guess, if you take too much, right?
Well, that may be, if you take too much of anything, but Saccharomyces boulardii, it was used in diarrhea studies with children to treat their diarrhea, for Pete's sake. So it's actually going to do the opposite. But yeah, there will be toxic people who, when they start detoxifying, they'll just dump. And, they will have diarrhea. It's a way for the body to get rid of stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I recently had a few weeks ago, my girlfriend and I actually had at the same time just a weird gut reset, and I plugged in this new scalar device, so I don't know if that was beaming us and causing a detox reaction. But I started taking handfuls of Boulardi, and it definitely helped. I was taking 10 capsules several times a day, and I didn't get diarrhea and felt great. So it helped.
You are such a kamikaze. It is amazing. Oh, that's fun. It's good.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, but yeah, RNA Reset, is that your website where people can check out your supplements? And
Yes, thank you. RNAreset.com.
Awesome.
And then I have my educational reset website has to be different, because the alphabet people don't like me saying good things about supplements. So the other website is drcarolyndean.com. drcarolyndean.com. And I had to go to a membership site to kind of hide myself a bit, because I had to take it down, 1,000 articles that I had up on the internet, because I was saying nice things about supplements.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
It's crazy times.
Yeah, it is. I know YouTube's heavily censored. I'm surprised I haven't gotten my account deleted from there. But then again, it's not. I have a friend that has a podcast. It's like, I think you've been on Justin Stellman's show, Extreme Health Radio, and it's like, seems like every 5 to 10 shows they put cancer in the title. I'm like, wow, you guys are brave.
Right.
But
it's
Right.
if you're doing good things do you get nailed, and then you're on the right track.
Right. Well, awesome, Carolyn. This was so much fun. I'll put the links where you guys could check out her website, her supplement, her awesome information. And yeah, thanks so much. Stick around as we close out the show.
Okay. Thank you so much. Totally fun. Totally fun. I can't believe it's been 2.5 hours.
Flew by for sure. Thanks, Carolyn. That is all for today's show. I took a lot of notes from what Carolyn said, and it's really cool that she has that S. boulardii, Saccharomyces boulardii, in her product. I've been delving into that therapy, and it seems to be beneficial for a lot of different conditions, including H. pylori, which some studies say 50% of the population has it. As I told Carolyn in the show, I've megadosed that S. boulardii handfuls of capsules, and I didn't have any turbulence. It only seemed to benefit me. So it works really well for my body. I thought it was interesting when she said that zinc is number 2 to magnesium in order of importance. I've been doing that zinc sulfate test, and it's become slightly more metallic with supplementing zinc bisglycinate. But I've been eating steaks really regularly, not a carnivore diet, but a significant amount of top sirloin grass-fed steaks for the last 3 years. And you would think that I would have sufficient zinc, but according to the zinc sulfate test, I was deficient. So I started supplementing it, and I've noticed that metallic taste is starting to appear when I swish that sulfate around in my mouth for 10 seconds. So if you want to check out Dr. Carolyn Dean, you can go to drcarolyndean.com, and her products are at rnareset.com. I just received a few of her products in the mail yesterday, including ReMag, which a lot of people rave about, and I'm really excited to try it out. I also got the Pico Potassium, the Flora Revive, and I think the Pico Zinc. So she has a lot of cool products, and I think the person that popularized magnesium probably knows how to create a good magnesium product. And it's really cool that it doesn't have that flushing effect on the bowels that many other forms do. I remember there was a time a few years ago when I was drinking a lot of magnesium bicarbonate. And the problem with that form is that, especially for certain people, that can have a really strong laxative effect. And so this magnesium chloride form and the special processing that Carolyn did with it might be something to try if you tend to get that laxative effect from the magnesiums that you've been taking. My website is matt-blackburn.com. And I did temporarily take down the CLF protocol while I rewrite it, and I will have time to do that the next few days. Finally, it's been a little hectic. Just started logging on my property to make room for fruit trees and more walking trails. And since all my new discoveries the last 4 or 5 months, I definitely want to update the CLF protocol and integrate the new understandings that are way less fear-based than a lot of other protocols are. If you click on shop, you can see all of the recommended products up there. I actually just ordered a new product from Satchery, the marine collagen, which I'm really excited to try. I've never taken that form. And I actually just put up on the website a vitamin D test. So this is a 25 hydroxy vitamin D test. They send you the lancet, you prick your finger, you squeeze it, and let the drop of blood fall on the little collection paper. You mail that in the same day, and then within a few weeks, you get your results back. And they have other cool tests as well. They have omega-3 index tests. You can test 24 fatty acids, actually. That's what I'm going to do soon. Their coolest test is the B12 status test. I've been really delving into vitamin B12 lately since my levels were high, but then I had the binding capacity measured and that was low. And I expect this test to show high from what I understand about my symptoms and what I've read in the studies. So basically, you can have adequate B12 or even high B12, but B12 deficiency at the same time. And a lot of this comes down to genetics. I found 2 genes, TCN2 and FUT2. And I have several mutations in both of those, almost 90% in the TCN2 one. And that's kind of scary because that's the gene responsible for making the protein transcobalamin that transports vitamin B12 from the bloodstream to the cells. So it's the transporter for B12. And if that's not functioning properly, then basically you have to look into lithium therapy, that trace mineral which transports B12 from the bloodstream into the cells. So that's been my new rabbit hole lately. I love the intricacies and the details and the individuality of all these things because we can throw out the idea that certain supplements are toxic or nobody should ever take a certain supplement because that doesn't apply to a balanced approach when you're looking at genetics, blood work, symptoms, all of that together to form a picture. You can't just blanket say that D3 is toxic or ascorbic acid is toxic or zinc is toxic or lithium orotate is toxic. It just doesn't make sense logically. So next week, I'm actually interviewing a functional medicine practitioner, and I'm really excited to hear what he has to say about copper overload and genetics, which he's an expert on, and this whole B12 thing. So stay tuned for more information on that. That's a really fun rabbit hole that I've been going down the last few days. My company is called Mitolife. You can find that at mitolife.co. And really exciting things on the way. Panacea just came back in stock. A lot of people have been asking if the Shilajit is back. It is, and we have a pretty good supply, so I would head over there and stock up because who knows with what's going on internationally, what will happen. So it's always good to have several months supply so that you don't run out. So I'll see you guys next week. I'm going to go switch off my backup generator and spend the night with my cats and the fireplace. So I will see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.